And happy Friday. It's Lynn Davenport with Families Engaged. And I'm going to run through a quick presentation that I give across Texas that sometimes Mary Lowe and Mary Lowe is the founder of Families Engaged. And sometimes she does it with me and we kind of tag team. So I just want to run through some reasons why the Texas Education Agency Commissioner, Mike Morath, needs to be exposed. He must not be confirmed this legislative session, and that we need to do a full audit of the TEA and all of the contracts running through there and return to a classical model of education, traditional model with books, paper, pencils, take all the money that is going to consultants and special interests and nonprofits like Commit and the public-private partnerships like Educate Texas, and return that money to the students and the teachers so that they can get the best education possible. So I'm going to admit Mary in here. You there?
Yes.
Okay, I just started recording and I'm recording about Morath. So I'm going to share the screen and you can just chime in when you'd like. And hang on just a sec. All right. So I'm going to run through this really quickly and you can come on when you're ready. Okay, so the Texas Education Agency is failing, and Mike Morath is the appointed commissioner, appointed by Governor Greg Abbott in 2016. Families Engaged is the organization that Mary and I are with, and we are on a warpath to protect the kids of Texas, get them the services they need, help families advocate for themselves and understand the grievance process when they're not getting services. And then we are also tackling the issues at the Texas Education Agency. Morath, we give him an F. We have ratings for all of our campuses in Texas, and that this A through F rating system has been implemented by him through the legislature, and we give him an F, and we're wondering who rates him, because we don't have an accountability system for him and we need one. It should be the governor and the legislature, but that's not happening. How do we get in this? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, it's not happening. And a major issue here.
Your camera's on the back is reversed.
Oh.
I can't see you.
Now, can you see me?
Okay, yes, we can see you. Yes. Hi.
Thanks. Okay, well, that'll be a happy piece. So
we're keeping it real here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing with Mike Morath is that people are covering for him. And I think that we have to call into question right now, after what we just exposed with a member of the TEA, really outing what we've been saying is the true agenda all along, is governor keeping Mike Morath just to get these vouchers through? Because he has not led TEA. He has only been the personal lobby for the governor. And we need to look at that. He needs to be fired because he hasn't done his job. He has not done his job. He undermines the constitutional republic by usurping the voting body over and over and over again. And he does it with committees. He does it with work groups. It's just out of hand. And the people who are suffering are the children. The quality of Texas education has plummeted in the 6 years he's been the head of the Texas Education Agency, and taxes and money spent on education have soared.
Okay, so I'll get to that data in just a second. And so just running through some quick reasons how we got in this mess. It's not just, Morath has exacerbated all of the problems in education in a very quick time in 6 years. But before that, so we've got federal intrusion, which started in the 60s and has grown increasingly over the decades. Unconstitutional bills and mandates, the breakdown of the family and the churches. Then you have grants and carrots and the Gates Foundation dangling those carrots. The Texas Education Agency takes the money, the local districts take the money, and they will do whatever the money people tell them to do. We've got technology, and this is a big one, and we are trying to eliminate the technology in K through 8, if not beyond, but that's a big focus. And because the ed tech vendors and the technology vendors are where a huge chunk of the money that's supposed to be allocated to education goes, and our bond debt goes to technology. And then we have TASA and TASB, the taxpayer-funded lobbying groups. There is a bill that has made it to committee for to eliminate TASB, which is the taxpayer-funded lobbying group that trains our school boards, trains them to vote in lockstep. It makes them rubber stamp boards, and the taxpayer loses our voice. Then you've got the education service centers. There's 20 of those across Texas. Those need to be eliminated. That's where a lot of the technology and the indoctrination comes through, training our teachers and our superintendents. And then you have Commissioner Mike Morath, which is the main point of this podcast. And so Mike Morath, who he was appointed by the governor. Todd Williams is the founder of the Commit Partnership. They are paid millions by the TEA, and Todd is listed on Morath's application to the state when the governor appointed him. So they're all in cahoots pushing universal pre-K technology, data-driven education, data harvesting, and they're both from Dallas. Then you have the portfolio model of education funded by billionaires like John Arnold, which you'll see in areas like Midland and what's the other one? Longview. There's other parts of Texas that are doing this. And then Lone Star Governance, which I won't get into that, but that is slowly trying to replace some of the things that the TASB board training suggests. And so Mary, we can do another show on that. I'm going to skip ahead to the next one. So Senator Paul Bettencourt, I won't talk too much about this, but he had the bill that was Senate Bill 1365, which allowed for campuses, the D and F rated campuses, to be eliminated from the accountability scoring. And so your district, like say Fort Worth, might look like it's a B, but it's actually a C or a D, depending on how many schools they removed from the actual score. So it makes no sense, since he's considered a staunch conservative, the tax man. He's trying to reduce our property taxes, and he's talking out of both sides of his mouth by supporting this commissioner who's spending year over year. You want to say anything to that, Mary?
Well, I would just say that in general, over and over and over again, the bills that Bettencourt has supported and the things that Bettencourt has done relative to education have left us worse off than we were consistently. And he just runs around supporting him, and he was behind this. Why? There has to be a why. Why is he behind this? Again, there's so much cronyism and nepotism, which you mentioned, and it is with our elected officials. You have to really know who they are in order to understand who you can trust and who you can't.
That's right. And we know that so Morath and Todd Williams are penning these bills behind the scenes and then getting these legislators to pass them. Why Bettencourt did it, we don't know. I don't know that it was his idea. I seriously doubt it was his idea, but that's often what happens. And that happened with Tan Parker's social impact bond bill. So he puts it forth to the legislature, and then Morath comes and testifies on its behalf, but it's really Morath and his buddies behind the scenes. Okay, so we'll go.
Well, and again, this is why it's super critical that everyone who hears this starts stepping up and starts speaking the truth. Because if we don't go to these guys and expose what the truth is, what it looks like when it's incorporated into the local ISD, they don't know. And then they say, we didn't know. So we have got to communicate boldly about this to them. Now, some of them insulate themselves and you can't get to them. And that's what I would say about Bettencourt. There's no way to get to Bettencourt. He insulates himself. And so, you
and I get meetings with people on the left and the right, but Bettencourt won't meet with us. I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does too. As a matter of fact, Bettencourt won't even meet with his SREC.
Oh, you're covering the mic.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah. So, okay. So this, the picture here, you've got Todd Williams there, Mike Morath in the middle. That's Senator Royce West on the right. Todd Williams is often featured in the Dallas Morning News for his data-driven, data harvesting nonprofit that focuses on test scores and pre-K, universal pre-K. And this, I put the superimpose the TEA logo and put TFA because oftentimes Morath will hire, he's restructured the TEA to bring in Teach for America, TFA, change agents, one being the most recent, since it's been a revolving door with his deputies, his highest ranking officials. His deputies have been a revolving door of people in and out. And these Teach for America people, they often change jobs and get promoted and get favors, political favors here and there. But Steve Leschlow, who we exposed in the last video on our podcast, and Steve Leschlow is a Teach for America guy who used to be on the San Antonio school board. And Steve was caught on audio calling a parent of a special needs child who's been bullied in one of the Texas ISDs and tried to get her to talk to Abbott's speechwriter in order to push vouchers, rather than taking her grievance and her complaints that she has filed with the Texas Education Agency. Those have been ignored, but he was only interested in talking to her when it would benefit this agenda to push for the money following the child. Do you have anything to say about that, Mary?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have so many cases where people have complained at the Texas education at the state level, and we've had them checked on by senators, and the case will still be open, but the parent will have never heard a word. Some of them have been sitting there since last May. And as recently as October and November, this particular parent was told by the State Board of Education that Steve Leschlow was going to be reaching out to her to discuss her case. She received a letter saying that the case was closed, but he did call her when he needed something. This is how Texas Education Agency operates throughout. And this has to stop. It is too big. It is not run properly, and it has to stop. The other thing that I would say about Steve Leschlow is that, you know, he is from Teach for America, and there are videos out there of him when he ran that he is strongly for diversity, equity, and inclusion. He campaigned on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we talked to someone that's a big influencer in Austin, and he swears over and over and over again that Commissioner Morath is against diversity, equity, and inclusion. And to his face, Morath says he's against CRT and diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, his hires all have public records of committing to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I need to know, why is there a disparity between what this man says to people that are influencers and what he actually does when he makes hiring decisions at the Texas Education Agency?
Yeah, we've often found him to be duplicitous. He says one thing to a conservative legislator, and then he says another thing to a liberal or Democrat legislator.
Yeah.
So we find him to be kind of a chameleon in that way. And that's been going on since he was in Dallas. And so he has a way of knowing how and what to say, depending on who the audience is. And he does that with teachers, or if he's with another organization or speaking, he tends to adjust his speech to be that chameleon, look like he's for you when he's really stabbing behind the back. So I'm going to go into what you had mentioned in the beginning of the podcast about the increase in spending. We really have no return on the investment of hiring, of appointing him. And so we can show this with an increase in spending, a decline in the performance. This was long before the pandemic ever began. So they can't blame all of this on learning loss and COVID. All COVID did was it brought in a windfall to the Texas Education Agency of money, of COVID and ESSER funding. That also happened in our districts. And then you also saw a major increase in the use of technology devices, iPads and Chromebooks and such. So the TEA budget is way up, 37% increase in spending. Our information comes through public information requests that we have filed through the Texas Education Agency through the state. And then we also have data from the nation's report card and the Division of Research and Analysis Office of Academics at the TEA. So if you look at from 2016 through 2022, you've got $68.2 million that increased to $93.7 million in the TEA budget. Again, a 37% increase in spending. Then you go to K-12 enrollment. It's large. It's mostly flat. We're actually hearing that it's on the decline. So this is this data has actually changed since then. It had a 2% increase in enrollment. A lot of that was due to an influx in immigration and refugees, but they also backfill enrollment in our schools with pre-K students. So you'll have to watch for that in your district. So it may look like enrollment is steady, but it's actually declining. They're trying to backfill those seats with the pre-K children, universal pre-K. So if you look at 2016, you've got 5.3 million children. 2022 is 5.4 million children. We do predict that will go down. The commissioner has made a recent statement in a couple of articles since we made this presentation that say enrollment is in fact down. And then if you look at you want to say something?
Well, absolutely, it's down. And we certainly see at a local level. I mean, Fort Worth ISD is down 1,000 students. GCISD is down 500 students, and they're looking at closing a campus. And what we have found from working throughout the state is that these things are not unique. When we find them in one school, we almost always find it throughout the state, which is one of the reasons that we started looking upstream, honestly, is that because these are not isolated incidents of a rogue superintendent here or there. This is universal in the Texas education system.
Right. And you find parents losing confidence in their traditional public schools and finding alternatives, whether it be a pod or homeschooling or private school or something else. And even charter schools are seeing a decline. And what we're finding, they're trying to do this virtual learning. A lot of charters are getting into the online schooling, which is also before the legislature this session. And they're going to really try to push for funding for virtual education that the taxpayers will fund. So you will have 4 lanes of funding that we suspect could go through if we don't stop it. Of course, you have your public school system, which we're already paying for. You have your charter school system we are already paying for. That's a dual system of education. And then the third is virtual education, which they're going to allocate funds and recommend that during the session. And then you have the school vouchers, the education savings accounts, which is also, we're hearing mixed things about that. And that was part of what Steve Leschelo was trying to push for, is money following the child, even though his job is actually to represent the students in public schools, not choice and voucher programs. That's not what he was hired by the taxpayers to do. So I'm going to go into TEA staffing, then I'll let you comment, Mary. TEA staffing is way up. And remember, we said that he's bringing in his Teach for America change agents. He has increased, so he's restructured the TEA. He's gotten rid of a lot of the institutional memory that was there. Not that that was so good, but it was far better than what he has now. We would argue the TEA needs to be abolished, but he has a 31% increase in staffing. I follow the TEA on LinkedIn, and it often shows a group photo of all the new hires, and this has been going on for months. So from 2016, when he was first appointed, they had 919 employees, and now it's as of last year. In 2022, they had 1,203 employees. I'm sure that has increased even since we gathered this data. You want to say anything, Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I should pull another public information request. I bet you anything it's up 100. I bet they've added 100 employees since then. Yeah.
Yeah, and so much of this has to do with the increase in the funding that they get. And we would also argue to eliminate the federal funding, because that comes with its strings. There's no constitutional justification for the federal Department of Education to be involved in local issues. Okay, so return on the investment, there is none. 40% of students are performing below basic proficiency level. You'll find that across the board in Texas. Charter schools do worse than public schools, so people can't say that charter schools are outperforming our public schools, because they're not. So that idea that competition was going to raise all boats actually fell flat. So across the board, charters and public schools, they're all declining in performance. Then we're 42nd in NAEP scores for 4th grade reading in Texas. We're 46th in NAEP 8th grade reading scores in Texas. And then we've had a 7% drop in math scores from 2015 to 2019 is when we tracked this. So thinking about Morath implementing these math innovation zones, which set up for investors, ed tech investors and technology investors to get a return on their investment through increased math scores. They were going to put the investment in and then get a financial return. But as we've seen that math scores are actually down since he implemented math zones across Texas.
So, and it's really important right here, Lynn, that people understand that he is using the children as a commodity.
Yes,
when
absolutely.
When with the innovative math, he is allowing people to profit off of that. And that is literally selling the children. The children are a commodity. And that really is the banner that has to fly over the Texas Education Agency under Mike Morath, is that he has taken the children from belonging to the parent and being there to be taught, that they are his commodity to create cash flow. The one thing, though, that we don't know is that we can't track where all this cash is going because of all of the nonprofit agencies that are benefiting from it. You can't see where all the cash is going, but he is absolutely using these children as a commodity. And that's just the first place that he did it. So let's look at Amplify.
Right. Yeah, and that's why we would ask for an audit, because there are so many entities that are being funded by the Texas Education Agency, and so we want a full audit of that to get rid of these bottom feeders. Okay, so Amplify, we did meet with Commissioner Mike Morath in the office in the Capitol, and we had a meeting to tell him all of the problems that we've seen with Amplify. So that's just one experimental ed tech vendor that is funded by investors like Laureen Powell Jobs, who is Steve Jobs' widow, with Emerson Collective, her nonprofit. So he played dumb, like he didn't know that that's who owned it. But we, of course, that's one easy Google search. He knows that. He knows full well where this product came from. He's trying to clean it up, and we would say no, it needs to be completely eliminated, because they can clean it up to some degree, but because it's technology, nothing stands between the child and that program. The teachers can't see what they're doing. The parents can't see what they're doing. They could easily put that filthy stuff back into Amplify. We say, no, it must go. And then Learn Capital is an investor in Amplify. Morath steered a $50 million contract to Amplify after manipulating the social studies TEKS, which are the standards, through the State Board of Education. And that was a big controversy last fall.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to say here about Amplify is that we went again to an influencer in Austin, and we reported that that Amplify was purchased on a no bid contract. And Mike Morath was confronted about it, and he came back and he said no, that it was not a no bid contract. And he showed where he put it out for an RFQ. However, on the state website, there's the documents for the purchase of Amplify. And on those documents, which we provided, it asks for the RFQ number. So where is the request? And it says none, because it was purchased under the exemption of an emergency order. So again, here's an area where, it's duplicitous. He says to an influencer who could put a lot of pressure on him through his power with the status. He says to him, no, it wasn't. And he provides him with these documents that indicate that he put it out for bid. But yet the official documents that are available to the public on the Texas Education Agency he signed say that it was a no bid contract. So what's the truth?
Right. What's the truth? We know there's a history here, and I won't go into too much of it, but there was an IEP analysis project. That's the special needs data, where he was data mining special needs students and selling that private sensitive data to a guy from Teach for America, a startup out of Atlanta. That scandal, there is a state auditor's report that reveals all of the no bid deals within the deal. So there were multiple contracts within that through some of his deputies. Okay, and then I'm going to go and list a couple of other egregious things. No bid contracts totaling $128.4 million. If you add, I'm sure it's more than that. This is what we know about different vendors like Amplify. The new teacher project, TNTP, was 60 million. You've got Commit and Teaching Trust, that totals 13 million. Then you've got SpedX and Tembo, the one I mentioned that was the state auditor's report where he was busted for this, 4.4 million. So they're sharing, harvesting, and selling student data. It's not just to make money and line the pockets of his cronies. There's also the data harvesting and building these longitudinal data systems that take private sensitive data and they track the students from womb to tomb. So that's a whole other show that we could do. But just for people to know, this isn't just about money. It's about power and access and getting this sensitive data and tracking children through the workforce. And then you've got him circumventing the State Board of Education. Those are the elected officials. And what do we have, 15 of those, Mary, across the state? Yeah. And so through this, he was trying to redesign, he's already redesigned the STAR. That's also another show when that's the standardized testing, but he was circumventing the state board through the standards, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for Social Studies. We figured out what he was doing, and we were able to stop it for now, but we know he's going to try again. They are embedding.
Honestly, he's already doing that because he's working with the 1638 project, and they're going to try to circumvent the board here and the 1638 project. And what he's convinced 1638 to do is to adopt the standards that the SBOE halted and set aside to reopen when it's back on its regular schedule. And he's behind this. And my suspicion is that he's already committed the contract for this to Amplify. However,
and Pearson, right? Wasn't Pearson?
Yes. Right. Pearson and Amplify. Pearson is for EdTPA. So he's doing that with EdTPA, the licensure for State Board of Educational Certification, SBEC. But he's also doing it with this 1638 project to try to get them to push through the standards that he was proposing. And again, these standards, they're complete diversity, equity, and inclusion standards. And they minimize anything that would set the United States apart as the country we know it.
Well, and we know too that often with these agendas that they take away from the most basic things like reading, writing, math, science, and history, and they supplant those basics, and that's why kids are not on grade level, because they're bringing in all of this political stuff through the indoctrination and all of the non-cognitive things. So I'm going to go into embedding character traits. So we do know that they are scoring children under government character traits. And so they've embedded the traits in the STAR. They're collecting non-academic data, and they're teaching non-academic skills using the CASEL Social Emotional Learning Framework. You can research CASEL. And then math innovation zones we mentioned before, that came in through the same bill that brought us districts of innovation, DOI. It allows them to circumvent state laws in order to do these exemptions. I won't go too much into that. Just know that it's bad. And then here's all the districts.
So one thing that's really important to know here about the character traits is that this was a bill that went through in the House on an up and down vote. It was on a no consent agenda. So somehow somebody snuck that in there, and it was SB 123, and the plan. So you have the bill, and then you have the intention of the bill, and it literally says SEL. And then they are testing on this SEL. I believe it's unconstitutional, and we're seeing lawsuits in many of the other states crop up that it's unconstitutional. And I testified before the SBOE to set this aside, and TEA stepped in and told the SBOE no, they could not do that they had to adopt it. So a little bit of controversy there.
And the thing about that is, so even though they are mandated now through the legislature, parents have the authority, they can still opt out. So I don't care what they say, you have the right as a parent, if you do not want them to have any surveys, any non-cognitive testing of attitudes, values, beliefs, behaviors, and feelings. You say no to all of that. You only want academic testing. Okay, so we've got this just as a visual. There's no fruit at the Texas Education Agency. It's time for him to go. And we would ask that he not be confirmed this legislative session. I've been calling the Capitol to find out when that is. They have not set that date. We do have a list of things that we would like to see. Instead of the money following the child, we'd like the legislature and the governor to follow the money so that we can root out all of these unnecessary contracts and really return that money to the taxpayer. So if they want to lower the property taxes, the best way to do that is to stop spending it on wasteful things, both at the local level and at the state level. Mary, anything before we close? Any action items? We've got, I have to drop off in like 2 minutes.
Honestly, Lynn, money is a big issue here because the governor wants to solve all these problems with money. And parents mostly don't care about the money. What they really care about is the fact that the children are not being educated. Mm-hmm. If that money was being used wisely and there was a return on the investment, and Texas led the way in education in reading, writing, and math, and if we were turning out students who were risk takers and innovators and creative instead of bots, then we wouldn't care about that money. But that's not what we're doing. And it's poor leadership, it's poor management, and it's fiduciary irresponsibility by the Texas Education Agency. And ultimately, it's time for the Senate to hold him accountable, even if it does mean ruffling some feathers in the hierarchy of the Texas government.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And parents can write their senators and tell them, take some of these notes that we've given them or send screenshots from this, whatever we can do to get them to focus on doing what is right for the children, to follow the law and fight the lawlessness with the law. What happens with each session is that school choice, whether you're for it or against it, it sucks all of the energy out of the Capitol, of the room. And so we don't ever really get to where we solve any of these problems at the local level. And you got some saying, we need more money, we need more money. And then you got others saying, no, we spend too much money. But the reality is the money is there, but it's not going to where it's supposed to. I think most of us would have no problem with paying the teachers and even these exorbitant superintendent salaries. I'd be okay with paying a superintendent $400,000 if they were doing their jobs and they were doing what's best for the children. But that's not what we're finding. And so, yes, there is, the bulk of our budget goes to education, but it's not necessarily making its way to those that it's intended for. So anything else before we close?
Yes. In closing, really, you have to look at what's being said. It's lipstick on a pig. They're saying that competition is going to make a change. That is not true. The bill of goods that you're being sold about the vouchers is a lie. If the governor and the Texas Education Agency and our legislators wanted to fix government education, as a good teacher said, it could be done in 3 weeks. It's that simple. So let's get it fixed.
Okay, Mary, where can we find you?
Familiesengaged.org. Okay. And we have a website. We also have a Facebook, and really anybody's welcome to give me a call, 817-773-7166. And if you need anybody in our organization, we'll get them in touch with you.